all for being here. To the judges, thank you for coming out. I hope you find this round to be fun and educational. I know I certainly am. To everyone else, thank you all so much for being here. To the audience, this is a big audience and I do love it. And to Mr. Goss, let me shake your hand really quick, sir. This has been a great honor. I've been wanting to debate you since I started on my team, and this is going to be a fantastic round. So having said that, let's go ahead and jump into this. I accept his definitions, and I'm actually going to be going a little unorthodox. I'm going to be going off the off case first because it's going to set up a lot of knowledge that you as the judges need to know in order for me to evaluate this affirmative case. So first we're going to look at the fact that you can't test all things with a standardized test just the same as an essay. This kind of contradicts his second point because it's their point that says it restricts the knowledge. The problem here is that we're not only teaching knowledge to kids, we're teaching them skills. Skills on how to evaluate and synthesize things. Skills that we need to know in order to succeed. A graduation exam is not meant to make sure they have the necessary facts to tell someone about history on the street. It's to make sure that they have the skills to learn about history on their own. That they can go out and have a conversation about history. These skills are what is needed in an education in education surrounding with facts. When a graduating person, I shouldn't be able to go out and ask him, hey, what year did this happen? He can tell me and that's it. I need to ask him, why did this happen? And he needs to know that. Those things cannot be expressed on a standardized test because there just isn't enough room unless the question is this long and each answer is this long. That turns into an essay. And then we go on to talk about the fact that current tests such as the TAKS do not test all subjects. Too, this is an inherent problem. We can look towards the TAKS in Texas, only teaches math, science, history, and English. That's a big problem because there are so many other things someone learns in high school that need to be tested over. Because like I'm a speech major, there is no TAKS for speech. There are music majors, there is no standardized test for music, and you cannot have a standardized test for music because of the fact that it's an art form, but you can have an essay, which I will go on here very shortly. Then we go on to the second point, and this is what is really going to help me critique his case. And this is the theories of the summative exam. The summative exam is a teacher code word for basically that final exam that you take that really helps you, makes the teacher learn and know if their students have learned everything they need that is necessary out of a lesson or unit. And in this case, of course, there are multiple units because we're looking at graduation. So we look towards first Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom was an education philosopher back in the 1940s, and he's laid out a taxonomy that is still adhered to today. The Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, which is the mandate that all Texas teachers must follow in their classroom, is based off of Bloom's taxonomy. This is still a very valid theory that is utilized in every teaching field today. And what Bloom's taxonomy tells us is there are different levels of knowledge. Knowledge itself, or different levels of learning, and knowledge itself, also known as memorization, knowledge is the lowest form of learning. There are higher steps. The highest levels of learning, the medium levels of learning are synthesis and application. Actually taking ideas and being able to apply it rather than just memorizing facts. And then the highest levels of learning are that of creation, which is somewhat part of an essay, as well as evaluation. In an essay, we're allowed to test all levels of learning. A standardized test only tests us mainly on knowledge, or memorization. Do we know the facts? But the problem with that is whenever we write an essay, we're allowed to express the facts, but we also use those facts, our knowledge, to evaluate an idea if we must, to create an idea if we must, that we then evaluate. But more importantly than that, the middle level that Clayton asked for is synthesis, combining things together. And he talks about World War I. He says, well, I can't really ask all these different things. Yes, you can. If I write a test on World War I and it is told to me throughout what I'm expected on that essay, he can know that I'm expecting, the different social impacts that led up to that war. I'm expected to talk about the war itself. I'm expected to express those facts, but I'm also expected to evaluate those facts and take a bunch of different facts rather than going question by question by question and then putting those facts into one unit, one piece of writing. That one piece of writing is inherently better for the student because it allows them to be able to test on everything. And it is also good for the education process because the teacher then can evaluate every single piece of the steps of learning rather than just the bare minimum and make sure that that student truly is adaptable and prepared to get out into the real world. Simply knowing facts, as Mr. Goss said, when we're dealing with math, doesn't cut it. We have to know the skills. This is true in every single type of education. Then we go on to Piaget, who's another philosopher, and he talks about the stages of learning. He says that memorization is only valid whenever you're dealing with elementary school to early middle school kids. Concrete operational stages of learning, which is what a high school person is expected to be at when they graduate, he says the best way to test that is through an essay because the concrete operational stage, concrete deals with the facts, but operational stages deals with the other parts of Bloom's taxonomy that I've already told you about. Having said that, let's quickly go down this case and tell you how the off case directly applies. So first he talks about the fact that it eliminates subjectivity. The problem here is well, different authors think different ways. In English 1, you're expected to know those different authors and actually be able to evaluate and synthesize those things. But more importantly than that, we can look towards almost all standardized tests, especially the Texas Assessment of Knowledge and Skills. The TAKS test actually uses blind scoring methods. They take teachers, and the only educators who are allowed to do it, people that have already been validified to not be biased, and they're expected to go in there and evaluate it on a blind study. They're taken to Austin, and the people who are blinded, who do not know these students, they don't even have a name on the essay, are allowed to go in there and actually do these things. And this is inherently true. And then if you want to look towards biases at the same time, an essay question is very short and there's very little room for bias there. But if a teacher biases, say, World War II and its history exam, when they're actually forming that exam, they can actually use more World War II questions, which then in turn means that that bias can also impact standardized tests as well. And if kids are examining more on World War II than World War I, we see they're not getting a balanced examination of what the true knowledge and all the other levels are. And then he talks about proper evaluation, and he says knowledge of the subject material, I've already addressed that, and styles of the opera, I've already addressed that. And the true test of knowledge, I've already shown you how this is clearly better on the negative side, because a comprehensive exam, you can do a comprehensive exam in an essay, and it evaluates all the levels of learning. He said that it extracts knowledge, but you can. Look at trigonometry as the main example. If we look towards studies, we can see that we can write an essay and actually explain the math rather than just writing the math out. And the periodic table, the same thing, where you explain the significance of it, how it came to be, as well as that applying all the knowledge within it. So for these reasons, I urge a negative ballot now stand open for cross-examination.
Everyone ready? Sweet. All right, let's start. Okay, so against the first point, all you come up to say is that like people, in Texas are screened on being blinded, correct?
Yes, that essay test can be blinded. Yeah, that's just an example of how this bias can be controlled for. It's not just rampant bias where everyone going.
But my question is this: are all of our lives that we live like inherently subjective?
Is our lives
yes.
subjective?
Like this person grading this test has gone through some sort of life experiences, correct?
Absolutely. And if you're saying that those life experiences can impact your subjectivity, yes. But then again, remember that I tell you that the people here are screened to make sure that they are not inherently biased against whatever it is they're writing on, because everyone will be writing on a similar subject more than likely.
But that's my question: is how do you compare the results of these examinations to other students, to other teachers? Or
you don't compare students to students. You compare the students to the criteria set out to see if they've learned the material. All of us learn different. There are 4 different types of learning styles.
How do we improve our education system if we don't compare students? Like how one student performing in one district and one student performing in another?
You look at them and evaluate the actual teachers themselves and seeing where the lessons are failing. You can evaluate the teachers based upon multiple methods, not just a standardized test. You do take a standardized test, but
but my question is, can you evaluate those teachers based off essay responses?
Absolutely. The teacher work sample is a very popular way to evaluate teachers. It's about a 40-page essay where you go through and talk about every single thing you teach, your rationale for writing units, how you write those units, and then how you deliver those units. And this is mainly...
So instead of looking at how the students perform, we're taking the teachers at their essay and at their word on how they did something. Is that correct?
Absolutely not. These things have to be verified. Just like a journal article, I don't just get in there and spew facts or spew things that I think might be true. These are peer-reviewed, examined to make sure they are truthful.
All right, let's start with the two theories. You should talk about the first theory. And you say that the whole idea is it should be comprehensive, correct? That the test needs to be comprehensive.
The test can be comprehensive, yes.
Okay, and your second theory, you talk about memorization only.
The knowledge and memorization of the lowest levels of learning, yes.
And all right, what's the difference between the operational and memorization? Like you need to be able to conduct...
Concrete operational is Piaget. That's a different theory. It's basically saying that there are 4 different levels of learning, and that memorization and knowledge are only really testable in the elementary level. That's the prime way to test. But the most optimal way to test a student is learn. The best way to do that is on in high school and essay.